I think if I would have given myself a little bit more grace and recognized that I didn't need to get straight A's. I didn't need to, win everything. I didn't need to be the perfect sister, the perfect daughter. Everyone kind of else was giving me grace. Everybody else was supporting me along the way and would have understood if I got a B every once in a while, or if I, couldn't come to this lacrosse practice or something. Everyone else would have understood. But I think I was holding myself to very high standards.
Welcome to another episode of This Stays Between Us. And in this little advice to my younger self series, we are joined by Lily.
So excited, Zarin. Thank you so much for inviting me. We've been doing lots of podcasting together this week, so I'm excited that we get to continue with that little train. Thank you for having me.
You're welcome, you're welcome. For those of you who don't know, Lily started Be the Change Media Network, which focuses on amplifying underrepresented voices like mine and many young people around the world so that we can share our stories and be empowered through media our way. And so I'm really excited to talk to you, especially because I've met you as you now, but I'd like to know bit about you as you started on this dream and this sort of journey. So tell me a bit about your younger self.
Yeah, thank you, Zarin. I think that this was a really beautiful exercise for me to do today because I think I've been very busy work-wise and just kind of I've been like doing things a million miles a minute for the last couple of weeks, months, I feel like. And so being able to slow down a little bit and to think about myself and how I got here has been really, really nice. I think that it was really lovely to just spend a little bit of time. I was thinking about this on my run this morning, actually, which was lovely and peaceful. So thank you for that, Zarin. It was a wonderful thought process. But young Lily was, I think, like many young women that I have been fortunate enough to meet in my life and to surround myself with, very determined, I would say, very passionate about a lot of things, very curious about the world. I think that this is something that so many, like I said, of my friends and the people I work with, I think this was so many of us. We were always reading or learning or seeking out new opportunities to challenge ourselves and to learn more about the world around us. And I think that I always looked up to Hermione the most, which I know this is probably something that a lot of people can resonate
Oh
with.
yeah, I love
Fancied
Hermione.
myself. Yeah, exactly. I fancied myself a mini Hermione and I loved um I always thought about Hermione when I was in class and there would be so many times when nobody would be raising their hands in class and I would be the one to do it and I would always be really kind of as I got a little bit older, I started to realize, oh, this is kind of embarrassing, right? Like it's kind of embarrassing to keep raising my hand and I don't want to be like the know-it-all. I don't want to be that. But then I would actually think about Hermione and I'd be like, you know what? She saved Harry and Ron so many times and
Yes,
she was
she
always putting
did.
her hand up and she was awesome. So you know what? It's not embarrassing. If nobody else is going to do it, I've got the answer. I'll raise my hand. It's all good. So I think that was really a guiding role model for me in a lot of ways when I was growing up. And I think I really embodied that a little bit extra because my parents were both teachers as well. So I think the academic life and kind of being studious and doing my homework. And my mom would give my siblings and I like extra coursework to do after school and before school
Oh
because
wow.
she had gaps that she wanted to fill in for us. And so, yeah, I think that that was kind of extra for me. I was very curious, but also constantly learning. And I was really striving to do really well in school. And that was very tied to my identity, which I'm sure we can talk a little bit about this because I think there are some things that I've had to unlearn because of that as an adult.
Mm.
But I can see little Lily now, always reading a book, always learning new things, being curious about the world, asking way too many questions. And I'm really grateful for that. I think that I had a wonderful childhood because I was so curious and yeah, always learning. So I wish that I could like sit her here with me while we're doing this interview and we could
Yeah,
chat.
that'd be so
I could
nice.
embarrass her, you know?
I'm always I always sort of think about sitting my younger self next to me and being like, I guess the one thing that I always want to ask my younger self is, are you proud of me?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
That is
Yeah.
such a That's so beautiful. And I think with me, I've thought a lot about that because, and we can definitely dive in further. I'd love to hear your thoughts on this, Saren, because I feel like you might have some similar feelings. But I think for me, am working in a field that younger Lily didn't know would exist, if that makes
Hmm.
sense. Like,
Hmm.
I think a lot of people are like, oh, yeah, I did the career that I set out to do. Like I accomplished I became a doctor, I became a lawyer, I
Hmm.
did the thing that I set out to do. But I think for me, it's a little bit more complicated to think about younger Lily because she actually didn't know really. Like, I think that I kind of had this idea of like, I want to do something big and something cool, but I don't know what that is. And I've had lots of different goals over the years. And I think she would be proud because it's kind of my career now is kind of charting a new path and working to create something entirely new. But it is a little bit more tricky than, yes, I got that medical degree and now I'm a doctor. It becomes a little bit more nuanced. But I wonder how you feel, Zarin. Do you feel like I'm turning this around on you, two podcasters dueling here. Do you feel like you've made your younger self proud?
I am in a debate with that actually internally because I think about my younger self and when I was happiest, and that is when I was in the library reading a book or when I was pretending to be a teacher and sitting in the living room talking to my cushions and reading a story out loud to them. And I was happiest then in my own world. So I think my younger self would be proud of me if I continued to take these moments of passion for literature and joy for books with me into my adulthood. Then my younger self will be proud of me. That's what I've learned. And I know that my younger self won't be proud of me if I choose to ignore what I truly want.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I
yeah.
love that. I love that. And you are doing that. I feel like ever since I've known you, you're trying to figure out new ways to express your creativity and to hold on to all of that. So I'd say she's proud. She's sitting there. I'm sure she's smiling. So I'm sure little Zarin is excited about this. So
Yeah,
yeah,
little Zarin had no idea she's gonna do podcasting, and yeah,
she's a
now we're
surprise.
here. Yeah, I guess this brings me nicely on to the question of what advice would you give to younger Lily?
Yeah, I think the advice that I would give has changed. So I actually got asked this a couple of weeks ago when I was talking with someone. And I think even in the last couple of weeks, I've reflected a little bit on this because I actually just like didn't even know what to say when I was asked it at first. I think that it kind of caught me off guard. I just hadn't really thought that much about it. I think I would probably say give yourself grace. I think that I held myself to a very high standard when I was young. And again, I'm pretty grateful for some parts of that because I think that it's made me into the person that I am today and in a positive way in a lot of
Yeah.
ways. I think, again, there's some unlearning that needs to be done. I think if I would have given myself a little bit more grace and recognized that I didn't need to get straight A's. I didn't need to, win everything. I didn't need to be the perfect sister, the perfect daughter. Everyone kind of else was giving me grace. Everybody else was supporting me along the way and would have understood if I got a B every once in a while, or if I, couldn't come to this lacrosse practice or something. Everyone else would have understood. But I think I was holding myself to very high standards that I was imposing upon myself. And I was seeing a lot of my friends who maybe their parents were imposing their standards on them, or it was their siblings that they were trying to live up to their expectations, that type of thing. But I was recognizing it was really just me that was putting all that pressure on myself. It was
Right.
really nobody else. And I think that that has continued. And again, in a lot of ways, that's made me very ambitious and I love a challenge and I'm always looking to kind of collaborate and expand and level up the work that I'm doing and also the network is doing, which is awesome. But I think that I still do have that tendency to hold myself to a crazy high standard. And sometimes I need to kind of remember, Lily, we're all human. Take a breath, relax. You might miss a meeting here or there. You might need to take a day. You might need to take a mental health walk when you were supposed to be in a meeting. do what you need to do. I think that there's a lot of that I've had to kind of break down and learn a little bit more into adulthood, because I think I grew up just doing everything I could constantly and just
Mm.
at a very rapid pace. And yeah, I think I could have slowed down a little bit, taken a breath, been a little bit more careful with myself, a little bit kinder, more kind to myself,
Mm.
which is why I think on my podcast, I love when people talk about self care. I have a podcast about young change makers, just for anyone listening. And I think a lot of them are very high achievers, and, they're running organizations and they're leading international movements and they're doing all this stuff. But I love when people talk about taking that step back, taking a break, doing what makes them happy, trying not to do anything that is productive. And
Mm.
productive is kind of in quotes because that means something different to all of us, but taking time to just do what refuels them and what brings them joy, which Darren, we talked about in a recent podcast episode as well.
Yeah.
Just taking time to refuel yourself so you can give back, looking after yourself so you can show up as the best you possible. But I could go on a tangent about this forever. So I think that's what I would tell myself. Take a bit of a rest, give yourself grace. Um, it can be done tomorrow. That's also something. It doesn't need to be done at midnight tonight. It can be done
Oh
tomorrow.
yeah, yeah, that's definitely one that I'm guilty of because I'll plan something like I'm gonna look at this assignment. I don't do it during the day. I'm like, right, I can't go to bed unless I look at it tonight. And then the next day I wake up feeling like a zombie and I'm like, oh, this is a cycle that keeps going. And it's not gonna serve me well later. So I've got
No,
to give myself grace, let myself sleep a little bit, then come back refreshed. And I think that self-compassion, it's really, really important because I mean, I'm sort of noticing this as I enter into the depths of adulthood, that if I don't talk to myself nicely, I'm gonna struggle to do things that bring me joy, or I'm gonna struggle to accept moments where I've failed because I'll think of it as me completely falling apart. And I've got to give myself grace and forgiveness and talk to myself with kindness because only then I will feel comfortable enough to grow. So I completely agree with your advice because I sort of similarly high achiever mode. I need to get this grade, that grade, beat this person. I need to get into this uni or something, things like that. And when I didn't reach those metrics, I felt disappointed in myself and equated that with my self-worth. But growing into adulthood is realizing that those metrics don't define your worth as a person. And you, with your flaws and your mistakes, you're still very valuable. But you've got to treat yourself like that too. It
yeah.
starts in here first. You treat yourself with kindness and it becomes easier. Yeah,
It's true. And I used to think that that quote about like, would you talk to your best friend the way that you talk to yourself?
I
I
think of
think
that
about
one
that
as
all the
well.
time now. Yeah,
Mm.
yeah. And I used to think that it was so cliche. And I used to think like, oh, that's ridiculous. Like for whatever reason in my mind, I was like, oh, yeah, of course, like I'm kind, but then when I started to actually think about what that meant, and I actually started to hear the way, especially when my friends, when we graduated uni and we started to go out into careers and we started to move to different parts of the US and even different parts of the world, I started to think of the way that I was encouraging them with their careers, for example. And then I started to hear my inner self-talk about like, this has to be done. And, you have to work this extra time because you didn't work at this. Like, I started to hear the way that I was talking to myself, even in adulthood. And it was not the way that I was talking to my friends, where I was saying, oh my gosh, take your time in lieu. Like, what are you doing over the weekend? It was much more positive. And yeah, that was the first time that I actually took that quote and kind of that concept to heart, where I was like, yeah, that makes sense. That is not cliche. That is real. And I need to pay more attention to it. But yeah, yeah. Again, I could rant forever. So
Oh, no, please do if you would like to. I'm in no hurry at all. I agree with you because my younger brother was talking to me about GCSEs and revising for them. And I'm trying to think of, well, what would I say to him? I tell him he can do it. He's got this. If he works hard, it will pay off. And to not be mean to himself if he gets something wrong and his marks don't define him. And then I think about what I would have said to myself during GCSE year. I would have been like, if I don't get a grade 9, what am I doing? I'm not smart enough. I'm not good enough, and I would have crumbled. And I realized that self-talk, negative self-talk, paralyzes you so much more. You don't get anything done. And when you talk to yourself as if you can do it, you've got this, you'll at least make a step. And it won't be
True.
you sitting quietly, frozen, afraid of starting. Yeah, yeah,
So true. It's so true. And I love that example of your younger brother too, because I think that's also the sister and the older sister type vibe. I think that that's also something that is so, and I think that we're talking about it a lot more actually in society. Like now there's this whole kind of older sister,
yeah,
side of Instagram and TikTok and things. But I think that that does need to be given a lot more time in a lot of, at least in my brain. I won't put this on everyone, but I think the expectations of an eldest daughter of an older sister is the expectations are serious and there's a
they
lot
are
placed on,
serious. Yeah.
there's a lot placed on young women at a young age. And I think that that is not necessarily a bad thing. Again, I think it's just kind of how you internalize it and how it shows up in your life. But
Mm.
again, I think the way that I talk with my siblings is the same. It's so positive and, oh, take a break, don't do that, don't do that internship interview, you can reschedule it for a later date, you can, everything is so, how can you make this more comfortable for you? And that is not the way that I would be talking to myself when I was their
Yeah.
age.
Yeah.
So
I know exactly what you mean. Yeah, it's like you judge yourself with a much harsher lens and you expect yourself to come out on top. And if
yeah,
you don't, you punish yourself with this self-talk and then feel miserable and wonder why are you feeling sad? But it's you bullying yourself and
no,
that's such
exactly,
a
exactly.
you're at war with yourself and it's such a no one can see it, but you know it's happening.
It's
Yeah.
so hard. Yeah, 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 yeah. But I do think really good advice that I wish I would have taken to heart sooner, but now I think I'm able to kind of unlearn some of it and remind myself as a young adult who's still learning, I still got time. I've just got to take the more kind of intentional route to make sure that
Yeah.
I get that into my brain, and take the time, give myself the grace, relax a bit, do things that make me happy and don't require any emotional or physical labor.
Mm-hmm.
Relax. So
Yeah. Yeah. No, I 100% agree with you. And I'd like to ask you my final question, which is to
of
tell
course.
the audience a story, any story, just anything that speaks to you.
Yeah, I think for me, I actually recently connected with some of my cousins who live in France. And it's really interesting because my whole family, I'm from the US for any listeners who couldn't catch that from my accent. I grew up in Colorado, which is in the middle of the country, and my family is actually from the eastern part of the US. They're from
Mm.
Pennsylvania. And so my cousins actually went to France and we went to a whole different part of the US, which is pretty much like moving internationally when you think
Yeah,
about
the
the
different
distance and the
continents as
culture and
well.
stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah. So so yeah, we kind of went our separate ways, and it was so interesting because we got together this past weekend for Easter all together. And I think the story that I'll tell is a little bit about just reflecting on the moments that we remembered from being together. I thought that it was so interesting because the moments that I remembered were around playing Wii actually with my cousins.
Oh.
We had a Nintendo Wii when we were young in our basement, and it was something I think we were so excited to share with our cousins. And maybe it was because I had this like pride of showing them the Wii and being able to teach them how to play the Wii, because my cousins are a lot older than me. So I think it was this moment of like, I can show you guys how to play this, and this is like my thing that I get to share with you. Um, we were playing bowling and we created little me's for each of them, and we were so proud of that. And I remember that so vividly, like us playing the Wii down in the basement. And my sister also remembered it, but my cousins didn't remember that at all. Did not remember it
Oh.
at all, which
Oh.
was really funny. I know. And then it made me kind of sad. I was like, oh, Okay, all right, fine. What do you
Well,
guys
that
remember?
was your proud moment as
I
well, and I
know. I
don't
was like,
remember it.
okay, my pride and joy. But then it was interesting because my aunt remembered my little sister is really into fashion, and she has been for her entire life. And we went to a thrift shop and we all went shopping, which I don't remember this. My sister remembers this, but probably because it had to do more with her. This was her thing, her element. But we went we all went shopping, and my sister wanted this one blue dress. My sister was 3 years old, I think, so like toddler, like baby. And she insisted on wearing this blue dress on this hike that we were going on. And so she was wearing like a full like floor length for her because she was so
Oh, she's
small.
toddler as well,
Blue dress.
floor-length dress.
Yes, on the hike, blue dress on the hike. And that's what my aunt remembered. And then it was so interesting because my cousins actually only remembered going to an American football match. And they remembered seeing the players and seeing how big the players were and watching them play football. And so I thought that was actually a really wonderful weekend and a really wonderful kind of reflection. And I wanted to share it here because I feel like it goes back to the moments that we remember and the pieces of our lives that really defined us, but might not have
Mm.
had any significance to anyone else.
Yeah.
Um, and I thought that it was a really beautiful thing. And I really reflected on it a lot after, where I was like, these are really small things and really kind of insignificant things, I guess, but they really shaped me. These are the memories that I have with my cousins. You know, this was the only time that I'd seen them in 20 years. And I'm thinking about the we, and they're thinking about the football match, and my sister's thinking about this blue gown. And I just thought it was really beautiful because we can all have the exact same experience. We can all have the exact same memories together, but what sticks with us and why it sticks with us can be totally different. And then that can shape those memories for us for the rest of our lives. And that can really dictate kind of how we view one another, how we view ourselves. And yeah, it just has really stuck with me. So now it's out there into the world on a podcast, which I wanted to share because if anyone has those feelings, I just think it's very cool. So yeah, not as related to like me or my personal journey, but I thought it was cool. Do you have anything like that, Saren?
Um, things that I mean, I'm thinking about sixth form, for example, and what
Okay.
I define by my sixth form experience is waking up every morning, sneak into the bathroom to do a bit of eyeliner, and then sneaking out of the house without my parents noticing. That's what I remember. Though I don't know if I spoke to someone else about what they remember from sixth form, they might be like, "Oh, I don't remember it much because it was near COVID time and I don't really think about it." So
Mhm.
it's an entirely different experience from a different perspective, but it's the same thing, the same time frame, the same school. And so like different periods of life, even though you've lived them all together and you may be in the same room, you might remember things a bit differently. And it might be like you saw one thing from that moment and they saw something else completely different.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
yeah.
No, and I think it's so interesting, especially with like growing up. And I think when I was thinking about the advice for my younger self, like the way that I remember things might be totally different from my parents like remembering things, and kind of even me holding myself to a really high standard, that's very much like all in my head. And others might not have seen that at all, but that was such a formative trait in my childhood, and that was such
Mm.
like a driving motivation in my childhood, this like ambition to kind of keep doing more. And that was all in me. I think it's something that now has really shaped who I am now, but again, just totally internal. And maybe my parents were like, you know what, we didn't see you doing your homework all that much. That's crazy that was in your head. We didn't see
Oh,
that. I doubt that
oh,
they would feel like that, but you know what I mean, where it's like I think
yeah.
all of us can have different perspectives on the same time, like you were saying. And yeah, the memories that we bring along with us shape who we become so much more than maybe we give them credit for.
Mm.
So yeah, while that we was a very proud moment for me, not for my cousins. So
They didn't remember it. They didn't remember your proud moment.
shot to the heart, shot to the heart.
Oh, I guess it maybe teaches you that what defines you and your experience with the people around you is not necessarily what you achieve or what you pride, but you being there and your presence and the joy that you bring.
It's
Yeah.
so true. It's so true. And I think it's those moments that might not have anything to do with success. They might not have anything to do with none of those moments that people shared were about like achievements or like even really like connecting with one another in a very like formal way. Like we went on a huge hike and nobody was talking about like the views of the hike. We were talking about these small moments of connecting with one another that didn't really have any significant achievement at the end of them. You know, they
Yeah.
didn't have, it was just these moments of being with one another and
Mm.
not necessarily that much happening, just being able to spend time with one another and observing each other. And I guess the football match is probably the closest to something actually happening. But again, they were just kind of watching. It was a training session, so they're just watching guys run around together and asking my dad questions, which that was probably the more interesting part, asking my dad
Yeah.
the questions.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think it's about connection and those smaller moments rather than the big. We went on an awesome hike and went to the top of this mountain. Nobody remembered that. So
Yeah, like no one
about
really
perspective.
remembers the overarching achievement feat, but the little connections you make along the way, the little moments of warmth. Um, I mean, I was thinking about how in sixth form again, we had a debate club. I think I talked about this in my very first podcast episode, the
Oh,
debate club, and I was running it, and the first one was about feminism, and I was thinking I'm going to convert all the boys in my class into becoming feminists. I didn't. And I thought I did a bad job of being a feminist in a debate club. And I was so disappointed in myself that entire weekend. And my friend tells me, "Oh, your debate club was so good. It was really exciting. Everyone was engaged." But that's not what I remember.
yeah,
But that's what
yeah.
he remembers. And so that entire perspective shift. It's
It's
so,
so
yeah.
so
Yeah.
true. I wonder if you've had that with your podcast too, ever, where I've had this where I think that it might be like a really bad interview for one reason or another. Like for me, like I never think that it's the other person. I feel like I'm always like, oh, I fumbled over my words. Like I didn't get that point across. I feel like I didn't know enough about their topic or something like that. It's always me being more critical. But then when I listen back, I'm like, you know what? That was not nearly as bad as I thought it was. I think
Yeah.
it can be perspectives within your own head, where it's like in the moment you're stressed or you're, putting too much pressure on yourself. And then when you back up and you're like, you know what? Relax. It's okay. Give
This
yourself
is,
grace.
yeah.
It was fine. You're
Yeah.
good. But yeah. And I think with your debate example, I feel like that was probably that where you went in guns ablazing, you were ready, gonna make everyone feminist.
Yeah.
And they still loved it, they still loved it. They got a lot out of it. But you had these crazy
I was
expectations
like,
for your
I'm gonna turn them all into feminists by the end of the session. Nope.
by the end of the hour, everybody is gonna be ready.
They
It's like you
weren't. Oh, they weren't, and I was so disappointed in myself. And my friend told you did amazing, and even
yeah.
the deputy head teacher was like, Zarian, you did amazing with that debate club. Will you bring it back again? I'm like, I thought I did badly, but okay.
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. It's all about perspective. And I think all of the stories, and I think that's also why the work that we're doing with podcasts and stuff is so important, is, it's the people telling the stories and it's the people actually being able to recount their own lived experiences, which is
Yes.
so often lost in the mainstream media. In most media, I would say actually stories are being told about people rather than us actually telling them and
Yeah.
share our memories, which I think you're doing the most, Sarah, and where it's these raw stories. And it's so funny when you mentioned sixth form, because I feel like it's almost like walking alongside you in sixth form. Like I was there with Zarin in sixth form.
I
It's
feel like
really
everyone was at this point. Quite a lot of my episodes are focused on sixth form because that
good. I
was my
love it.
defining experience and I absolutely loved it. Yeah.
I love it. I love it. And that's wonderful that you get to share that part of you. And I get to feel like I'm a small part of it too, when I listen
Oh,
to you tell your story. But I think that's why the work that we're doing is important because we do get a lens into one another's experience. And
yeah.
the more experiences you hear, the more stories you hear, it's so hard to dislike someone when you've heard kind of when you've heard honestly some of these questions that you're asking me. I think it's hard to find issues with people when you're talking about your little selves, and you're talking about advice that you'd like to share for them and things like that. So yeah, it's all about empathy, I feel like. And yeah, I love it.
This brings us to the end of the episode. I really hope you enjoyed listening to me and Lily talk about our younger selves and what advice we would give. And yeah, if you're a high achiever as well, I really recommend follow Lily's advice and give yourself grace for the things you couldn't show up for or the things you didn't have enough energy for, because it's okay to take breaks and it's okay to take time for yourself. If you would like to be featured in a future episode on advice that you would give to your younger self, message me, DM me, or sign up using the online form in my Instagram bio at this_stays_between_us. Have a good day. Thank you for listening, and salam, your host, ZK. See you for another episode soon.